And we are live. Welcome to the Dave K Show. I'm David K. Gyro, and we're broadcasting off the beautiful banks of Falls River in beautiful Pointe-Coupee Parish, Louisiana. And we're at the historic Julian Partridge Building in the Arts Center and Museum. And we're so glad to be here. We have a great show lined up for you today. We have a well-known and a very good actor from the Baton Rouge area. We're going to introduce you in just a second here. But one of the things I want to do before we get started is put a shout-out to PointeCoupeeReporter.com. They've been most gracious to have our show on the front page of their website. And, of course, everybody in this area goes to the PointeCoupeeReporter.com to get their local news from Pointe-Coupee Parish. So PointeCoupeeReporter.com is Pointe-Coupee's oldest locally owned and continuously operated news website. Since 2012, they have been Pointe-Coupee's news and information hub. Check them out at PointeCoupeeReporter.com. All right, without further ado, we are going to introduce our next guest. We have with us in studio live Mr. Frank R. Wilson. How you doing, Mr. Frank?
I'm good.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being out here with us.
Oh, my pleasure.
We've been having a lot of great guests, and it seems like each guest that we have, it just gets better and better and better, you know. And so what we're trying to do is our niche we're trying to get into to find out what works in this area. And it seems to be the film industry, acting, the music industry, entertainment industry, that kind of stuff's going really, really well. And for that being said, I'd love to have you over here. We're going to discuss a lot of things that you've been involved with in the past, what kind of got you to where you are today. But first of all, kind of introduce yourself and let the people out there know who you are and what you're currently involved in the Baton Rouge area.
Wow, that's a loaded question. Let's see. How do I start? I was a career HR executive, I guess you might say, for close to 30 years. Lived all over the world, basically, and certainly traveled all over the world in that kind of business. Did that until about 2004, at which point I became a small business owner, and I owned a bed and breakfast in Vermont for a while. Then as circumstances came about, my mom, who lived in Baton Rouge, needed some extra help around the house, and so we decided to sell that and come back to what was really basically home. My wife was originally from here, and I had roots here as well. And I tried to get back into corporate life, but I didn't leave corporate life. I think it ended up leaving me.
Right.
So there was a moment there that happened where I said, yeah, I need to do something different. And that's what brought me to where I kind of am today, I guess, with Act 2 of my life.
Sure.
In pursuing acting.
Sure. So how long has it been since you really got the acting bug and you've been doing things a lot more, frequently-wise than you have in the past? I mean, there's a point in time where, you really got busy and got a lot of jobs, a lot of gigs.
I guess the turning point was here I found myself, I'm trying to think here, 2014. I was unemployed at the time, and I answered an ad that said they were looking for background extras in the movie The Magnificent Seven.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So I went and had a photograph taken and all that kind of stuff, and then I didn't think anything of it. I was driving for Uber several months later, 11:30 on a Friday night. My phone rings, and I thought, this is kind of weird, so I went ahead and answered it. They said, could you be on set in St. Francisville tomorrow morning at 5:30?
Wow, tomorrow morning, 5:30. That's typical.
Yeah, okay. And I spent 6 weeks on that film.
That's incredible.
And probably got about 4 seconds of screen time out of it.
Right.
But what I really got was, first of all, I made some fabulous friends that I'll always be grateful for. Wonderful experiences. But I looked around, and with all due respect to the professionals that have been doing this for years, I kind of looked around and I said, I could do this.
There you go. Right.
I said, I've been
attitude.
basically performing my whole career because I was a facilitator of training seminars, and I used to like to think that I was entertaining when I did them, and so I had been kind of acting and performing for 30 plus years. So
sure,
to me, it was kind of a natural progression.
Just not on the screen, but you were doing it. Yes, you were doing it. So really, when you look at it, hey, you were kind of grooming yourself for what you're doing right now. Just kind of behind the scenes.
I sometimes I think that. I just recently a dear friend of mine sent me a video. You know who Steve Harvey is?
Yes. Oh, yes.
It was a conversation with him and someone else who had just lost their job, and he was asking Steve how to stay motivated to try to find another job and doing what he was doing. And Steve said, well, what's your gift? He said, I know what you mean. He said, no, what is it you love to do and that you're really good at? He said, well, I'm pretty good in the kitchen. Anyway, Steve proceeded to tell him that maybe it was God's way of steering you to start working on that gift. That losing that job does not have to be a bad thing. It was an opportunity that opened up for you to pursue what you really should be doing in God's eyes.
That's a good way to look at things.
And it really spoke to me, given some of the things that I've seen happen recently in my life. Maybe this was divine intervention a little bit. It's tough going getting there. There's bumps along the way, but you know what? Maybe this was what I was destined to do, even at this late stage in my life.
That opens up 2 points right now. Number one, it's never too late to get started.
That's true.
Number two, when one door closes, a lot of times it's for a reason, another door opens, and it guides you to really what your destiny is, right? So,
I believe that.
Yeah. So tell us. So take us back. So you were in human resources, and you were doing your thing as far as setting up people in job situations, interviewing them, grooming them. What were you doing in the human resources part of your life?
I primarily designed and facilitated seminars on things like selling skills, leadership and management, team building, those sorts of things. And a lot of it was in a classroom. Sometimes we'd actually do team building out in an outdoor environment, but a lot of it was in a classroom, teaching leadership basics, whether that be how to coach people or how to correct them or how to give feedback. All those sorts of things were topics that I would deal with, and these sometimes might be a one-day seminar, or it might be a span of 2 weeks of working with new hires, helping them learn everything about their new job. Sometimes it was working with senior management. Sometimes it was brand new people.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I continue to gain experience in that, to where when I towards the latter part of my career, I was doing even more than that. Now I was starting to work on things like succession planning and identifying high potentials that might be in line for bigger jobs in the organization, and working with senior management on that. All those things, I really liked that.
Right. So was the Magnificent Seven thing the thing that really kind of got you into film, or was it something that happened earlier than that?
No. Actually, when we owned the bed and breakfast, I remember seeing something on the internet about a guy who was doing a film called 10 Acres, which was kind of unusual because our bed and breakfast was called 10 Acres Lodge. So I reached out to him, and I think at first he thought I was mad that I was, his title of his film was going to somehow infringe on my copyright. But
right.
I said, no. Do you need a place to film? He said, well, actually, yeah, we are kind of looking for one right now. And I said, well, let's work out a deal. And we did. Some of it was financial compensation, but as an extra added bonus, I was able to negotiate a small part in the film.
Sure. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So that was my first experience with doing it. Now, there were several years that passed before the Magnificent Seven thing happened, but I guess you might say that planted a seed.
Exactly, sure. So going through the years, whenever your gigs started coming little by little, and you started taking the different jobs that you put in for, did you see a recurring theme? I guess what part of acting did you enjoy playing a villain? Did you enjoy playing comedy? What do you kind of gravitate towards in your acting?
Look at this face. I'm the the businessman, the
yes.
lawyer, politician, starting to get kind of granddad kind of things going on,
right.
and stuff like that.
Right.
But it is fascinating that you do get boxed in, so to speak, just based on your look. Now, having said that, I'd love to play a villain or something like that. That would be really cool.
Right.
And those opportunities haven't come up yet, but I'm hoping they will at some point.
Sure, I think they will. Yeah, I think it's good to diversify yourself, be able to play different roles,
Oh, yeah.
stuff like that. That always helps out for sure. What's I guess you could say some of the later gigs that you have done? Anything noteworthy cause that you want to tell us about? Any things that kind of stick out in your mind that you might want to?
There's two things that occur to me right now. There was a short film that I was in a couple of years ago that won some awards and did the festival circuit. I was very proud of it. It was
short films are cool.
Yeah, it was it was the biggest role I've ever had in any kind of a project. I was basically one of the leads or stars, whatever you want to call it. And it was really interesting. A history teacher out of somewhere close to Alexandria had written this script that was, how do I want to say? It was political satire is what it was. Mm-hmm. There was a shooting in the town, and the police go and try to find the shooter. No one got hurt. No one was even hit. There was just gunfire going off. And the police go and arrest the gun.
The gun.
They don't arrest the guy who was pulling the trigger. They arrest the gun. And so we proceed to put the gun on trial. There's a gun sitting on a chair in a courtroom. I was the prosecuting attorney, so I was the bad guy. So I guess you could say I played a villain in that one. But
right.
And I'm trying to prosecute and convict the gun.
Wow, what's the name of that film? Do you remember?
Liberty Waning.
Liberty Waning. Can we find that on the internet anywhere?
I believe you can, either on Vimeo or YouTube.
Liberty
Waning.
And I think I know where the plot point's going in this film, right? The gun was on trial, not the person who got it.
The person who pulled the trigger, he was trying to testify, but we're not interested in you. It was a very clever script and really well done.
Right.
And made its point very clearly.
Yes, that's great.
So I was really proud of that.
Yes.
I am interested, hopefully here in the next couple of months, while it wasn't a speaking role, I did have the role of one of the judges on a circuit court during the process of Roe versus Wade.
Ah, okay.
And so you should see me in that film, even though I don't say anything.
Right.
And the director told me, I'd have given you lines, but actually in real life, the judge you're playing, he never said anything.
Right. True to character then. Right. That's great. Short films are a lot of fun, aren't they? They're easy to do. They're generally speaking pretty quick to get on the screen. So, of course, we don't make any money off of short films, but it showcases people's talent.
It does that, but it can be a very powerful format, either to make a statement, if you will, or even just to entertain. It's actually quite amazing what can be done in 20 to 30 minutes.
Yes.
I mean, I know you know about that.
Yes,
so.
Definitely. And it's a skill and it's a talent to take a story and bring it from beginning to end in that short amount of time. It's like commercial's 30 seconds. You have to be real skilled to sell your product in 30 seconds. Now it's 15 seconds. And now with the things on Facebook and YouTube and stuff, it's 5 seconds, 3 seconds. The TikTok thing that's going on right now, it's like your video in like 3 or 4 seconds. How short is our attention span getting to where,
I know. It is. It's getting... Well, now they don't even do a commercial. They'll just have a scroll on the bottom of the screen sometimes, too. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'll stick with the short film format. That's about as short as I would like to go to kind of tell a story. And I think it's good like that, So let's go back to, I'm looking at your resume right here, and you lived overseas for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so you lived in Dallas, Cleveland, Singapore, Hong Kong, Vermont, all kind of places. And even in the States, okay, the difference between Dallas and Vermont is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
The political climate is different in those states. The regular climate is different, hot, cold.
Oh, yeah.
So you told me before the show when we were talking that you want to talk a little bit about living overseas. So what brought you overseas?
I was working for Nokia at the time, living
Nokia
in
phones.
Dallas. Yeah.
The indestructible phones from the late
Well,
90s.
listen, when I was at the company, we were #1 in the world.
Wow.
And it's really funny how after I left that company, they started going downhill. I don't know if it's connected.
Right.
I don't know.
All right.
Just
it
saying.
Might be.
Anyway, I was offered a promotion to run the HR development function, which is basically training and development for the company in Asia Pacific, that region. So we were first based in Hong Kong, and then for a couple of years, and then I moved to Singapore, the same role for a couple of years. Life-changing experience.
Wow.
Both personally and professionally. Professionally, I had a chance to do things I never would have dreamed being able to do. Even producing a satellite broadcast, a 2-hour satellite broadcast that doubled as instead of getting everybody together for a meeting, we did it via satellite.
Interesting.
and I was the on-camera spokesperson for that. So I mean, that was kind of cool.
What time frame are we talking about? Like mid 2000s or what?
Yeah, well, that particular item was, I think, 2003.
Okay, 2003. And if you notice, I kind of pause here. So the iPhone came out around 2006, 2007, which kind of changed the whole cell phone market. And I guess Nokia never really got into the the screens and everything and the touch screens.
Well, believe it or not, they had the first smartphone. A lot of people don't realize
I did not know that.
It was about the same size as a brick.
Wow.
And it would open up to have a full keyboard, and then the screen was up there.
Okay.
By today's standards, not very sophisticated, but
sure, didn't know that.
But it was extremely expensive, and it was mildly successful. Mm-hmm. But what the iPhone did, obviously, was to create even a more powerful phone in a much smaller package. And that changed the game.
And then the apps that came out, and all the things they could do with the apps, which kind of revolutionized our whole way of living. So does Nokia still have phones on the market now, or are they licensed under somebody else?
I believe they do. They still manufacture the infrastructure for networks to work, the towers and the switches and things like that.
Right.
I know they're still doing phones, but Microsoft had bought that portion of the business. To be honest with you, I've kind of lost track. I'm pretty sure they're out there, but I just, obviously not very.
Right.
From a point, it'd be an interesting case study for someone that's interested in that kind of stuff, to see a company that literally dominated the world market. At one point, had about 40 to 45% of the world market.
Wow. That's
to
amazing.
go from that in a really relatively short time
That's
to
incredible.
free fall was quite amazing.
That is amazing. And I guess two different reasons for that. One would be the marketing that Apple does. They market their stuff very, very well. So, of course, Steve Jobs learned a lot of almost fatal mistakes in marketing. Remember when the first iMac came out? I mean, Apple was just laughed at, but his second comeback was the deal. And that's what made everything, really come back. So, and I don't know, it's interesting how when new technologies are emerging, a lot of the staple technologies kind of go down by the wayside, and it makes you wonder what's the next big thing coming up,
Well, it's one of the things we used to teach in one of my classes about change management, and that is when something like an iPhone comes out, or what we used to call a paradigm shift. That means everybody starts at zero again.
Wow.
What you did in the past, your success, none of it doesn't mean anything, because everybody's going to go back to zero and have to start over.
That's incredible.
And that's basically what happened.
Right. And really, we're kind of in the process of that right now, right? With all the digital media, digital technology, the Amazons. This seems to be a recurring theme in a lot of my shows, but I'm always talking about the shopping malls kind of going out, the brick and mortars going out, and everybody's ordering online. I read an article today that Amazon in the Baton Rouge area is going to be having like same-day shipping in some places.
I've seen a lot of their vans around, which like all of a sudden, just in the past couple of months.
Yes, they're all over.
I mean, that's a huge undertaking to have vans in all these major cities.
And we have a warehouse in Baton Rouge too,
which I didn't know, but that makes sense.
I think it's off of Airline Highway, from what they were telling me, by the Celtic theaters.
Oh wow, okay.
Yep, big huge warehouse over there. So let's get back to whenever you're living overseas. So Singapore, Hong Kong. Tell me about the culture over there overseas. What are the people like?
Well, Hong Kong was a British colony for a long time, so it's somewhat westernized, but it's still obviously Asia. It's like any big city. It's the New York of the East. So it's a big city feel, fast paced, crowded. Mm-hmm. People are kind of brash and want to get on with it.
Right.
But friendly nonetheless.
Right. Probably typical of any huge city, I guess.
And you could get by with English. Most everybody, the locals, most everybody spoke English or certainly understood it. Mm-hmm. And I always tried to make an effort to learn a few words in any of the countries that I went to, and the Chinese would always laugh when I was trying to. The name of my apartment in Cantonese was, well, I said Long Commune, which is what I think it. But they always go, huh? And I said Long Commune, and I go, huh? And I said. And then finally they'd come back and say, "You mean Pacific View?" I said, "Yeah." Oh,
Right, in English, right. That's hilarious. I love the Asian people. I really do. They're smart. The women are beautiful. I had to have to say that. I mean, the women in Asia don't age for some reason.
you're right.
What's
Well,
the deal?
to a large extent, I think they stay out of the sun is a big part of it.
Right, they food too, I think, yeah.
But yeah, fascinating people, really great food. But you know, I learned it to admire some of the things they do and how they do them. Still feel like, you know, that America was the best place on earth, no question about it. But we don't do everything the best. There are some things that are other countries do that are worthwhile, and that's where it kind of opened my eyes up for that.
Right.
But by and large, people are people, and they were very nice, and it was just an eye-opening experience that I'll always be grateful for.
Right.
And it obviously, changed us.
Was your whole family living there at the time?
My wife and daughter, yeah.
Did your wife do any kind of other jobs while she was there? Stay at home, or
I'm trying to think if technically she couldn't work overseas, but she ended up being the choir director for the American Women's Association, which was actually a pretty involved gig for her. She was a music teacher by profession, and there was a bunch of women that were all traveling spouses of expats that were working like me, and so they had a lot of activities they could do. One of them was a choir, and they would go around and do performances to raise money for charity and or just for entertainment purposes. Sing at the mall at Christmas time,
right?
Stuff like that, and that actually kept her pretty busy.
Right.
And she thrived in it. It was great to see.
And I have to ask you too, with you being in film and television stuff, did y'all go see any movies out there in the theaters, or what was their cinematic experience like?
I'll never forget. First of all, they love movies, and they have just as many theaters per capita probably as we do. So there's two things I'll tell you about watching movies over there. We, on a pre-visit to Hong Kong, they had encouraged us, do things like you normally would at home to get a feel for it. So we went and decided to go see a movie. And the movie we saw was American Beauty. Now, a couple of things that struck me. One, it was interesting seeing the Chinese subtitles at the bottom of the screen. But the other thing was, about halfway through it, I kind of turned to my wife and I said, are the people in this theater thinking this is what life is like in America? Wow. This is kind of scary. Is that something like film or TV can be so powerful and lead people down a certain way of thinking? I mean, you start looking at shows, like Miami Vice. I started thinking, do people overseas, when they watch Miami Vice, do they think, everybody's running around shooting guns all day? I mean, it's a show. It's not necessarily real life. And American Beauty was a film. It wasn't necessarily a slice of American life, although I'm sure there are some people that maybe are like that. But so that was interesting. The other thing was Singapore obviously has a richly deserved reputation of being very authoritarian and having strict controls over things like movies. And they would have when a new movie would come out, it would have to go to the Singapore Board of Reviewers or whatever they called them, and they would have to approve the film or demand that certain cuts be made before they would allow it to be shown in Singapore. Wow. Now, sometimes these were sexual things. It wasn't so much language, but it might be certain really violent acts or something sexual in nature they would want to cut out.
Did they have a rating system over there for their movies?
Yeah, similar. But the thing I remember was that when Steven Spielberg had just come out with Saving Private Ryan, it was shown to the board, and apparently they were communicating with Mr. Spielberg, and they said, "Well, we like this movie very much. We'd like to, we want this cut, we want that cut, we want that changed." And Spielberg said, "You touch one frame of that film, I'm not allowing you to show it."
Wow.
And so for the first time ever, the first movie ever shown that was not somehow edited by the Singapore government was Saving Private Ryan.
That is amazing. Wow.
And it was one of the highest grossing movies of all time because everybody wanted to see, okay, they didn't cut anything out. Let's see what's in there.
Right. Wow. And obviously the government just let it slide like it was, right? They didn't do anything.
They didn't touch a frame. Now, it's loosened up a lot. Yeah, and goodness, it's been over 10 years since I've been there. It might even be looser now. But even by the time we had left, they had started to relax a lot of their standards.
Right.
So it wasn't quite as tightly controlled.
So the movies that you saw, did they have English subtitles or how?
No, Chinese subtitles.
Chinese subtitles. Right, in the native country.
Right.
That's incredible.
They were at least the ones we saw were always in their original audio with English.
Interesting. That's very interesting. What about the like the Bruce Lees and Jackie Chans and everything? So
I didn't see any of those in a theater. So I don't know, but there's a market for that, obviously.
Right.
But especially in Singapore, is English or Singlish, as they like to call it, is widely spoken. So there's almost really no need for it there.
Right.
Most of the people there are bilingual.
That's incredible. Yeah, of course, anywhere you go in any civilized country or industrialized country of the world, English is spoken over there pretty freely.
We are very lucky because we don't have to learn a second language in most cases, and I always respected that. I felt very fortunate that I didn't have to, and that's why I would a lot of times try to at least learn a couple of good morning or thank you or things like that in their native language to at least make an effort. So.
Exactly, kind of show them that you are at least trying to make an effort.
Sure.
Well, that's great. So let's get back to your acting and kind of where you are right now. And I was looking at your resume right here, where you actually studied with some great acting teachers locally, Jim Gleason, Gary Grubbs. That's another thing I wanted to ask you is like, what have you done to kind of help learn the acting trade, and like maybe I guess what acting style did you pick up on, that helped you out?
Well, first of all, let me say I haven't done enough.
Right.
Yeah, I can always do more, but in reality, I've not really been able to actively pursue that for about the past year or so. But it's interesting how every teacher has a very distinct approach to acting.
Yes.
And I'm more of the I like kind of the organic approach to it. And I find it, I might be wrong because obviously you don't see my name in lights all the time, but it seems to me that it comes kind of natural to me to just put yourself in that character's shoes and be able to communicate.
Just keep it simple, right? Yeah, keep it simple. Just
but and there's so many good teachers in this area, by the way, that it's I almost feel a little bit cheated that I'm not able to take advantage of it, because they all have something worthwhile to give and to help you in your understanding of the profession. Now the downside of that is that if you do go to a lot of different teachers, all of a sudden you've got all these different methods going on in your head and you don't know which one to do. So at some point, if I were giving advice, I'd say find one and stick with it. And that's what I want to do at some point, but it hasn't. Situation's been such I haven't been able to do it right now.
Sure, absolutely understand that totally. And like you said, a lot of times it's good just to go in and find out. Forget about training. Some of the best musicians are the people who've never taken a guitar lesson. They've never taken a drum lesson.
All self-taught. It's amazing.
All self-taught. They're not copying anybody else's style. They're doing their own thing. And I think that's actually a plus, I mean, so you don't have to, and you can vouch, you don't have to go to an acting class. You don't have to put in a lot of time, in a structural, professional.
Well, I don't know if I'd go quite that far. You do need some training, and I don't mean to suggest that I don't, but far from it. I need plenty more.
Right. Yeah.
That it doesn't feel unnatural to me, I guess, is what I'm saying. It doesn't feel like that much of a stretch, which I think for some people it is, and they need something technical to help them get there, I guess, if you will.
Right.
But and it's it's different doing something live in front of I'm very used to performing in front of people. Mm-hmm. It's entirely different to have to do it for cameras.
Yes.
Entirely different. And so there are techniques about that, acting for camera, acting for film, that you do need instruction on that, even if you've done lots of theater.
I guess where I was going with that is we don't need a technical, like a 4-year college degree, I guess was what I was saying.
But
you can't take these classes.
You can, but I don't know if you really need it.
Right. A lot of professional filmmakers and successful filmmakers that never went to film school. They learned it on their own, And now in the age of YouTube and everything online, all these free courses that you can get on here, you can learn anything you want online.
You really can. You can almost You won't get the sheepskin, but you could almost get the equivalent of a college education.
Right.
If you were willing to work at it and find it out
Yes,
there, because
that's
it's
right.
out there.
That's right, and that's one thing in and of itself. But like you said, you do have to go and meet with other people, and you have to go do some acting. You have to do some practicing. You got to bounce things off another real person.
For auditions, that every bunch of people all huddled in a room and they're lined up and they go in and do their live audition one at a time. Technology has drastically changed that. There are a lot of projects where you do what is referred to as self-tape.
Right.
In other words, you get your iPhone or a video camera or whatever, and you have someone read the other person's lines to you, and you do the audition on video and send it in. And in fact, my first major role in a cable television show was booked completely off of a self-tape. I didn't have to go in person to audition for
Never
anything.
left your house. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the ways the times are changing too. That's right. And so if they like you, they'll call you in, I guess, to go further with it.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, you can get the inflection, you can get the tone. I have a lot of people that have auditioned for me online, sent me some videos and everything, and I kind of get a baseline idea of where they are in their acting. I'm going like, that person can be directed pretty easy. I can steer them in this direction if I want to, But I like their look, I like the way they deliver. They just need to be directed a little bit, and that comes with, of course, actually doing the project too.
Right.
So, well, that is great. So, let me see here. I want to kind of make sure I don't leave anything out on your resume that I kind of want to go over here. You have a daughter, of course, who's kind of interested in doing some productions also.
Yeah, I don't know if she was influenced by me or not. It might have already been there, but she's a student at Southeast Louisiana University. She's a very accomplished singer.
Wow.
Really, really good. And she got a scholarship, a music scholarship to go there, sing in a choir and things like that.
Right.
She's kind of going through a stage right now where she's trying to figure out where she wants to go in her career. But in the meantime, she continues to sing and excel at that. I'm going to be seeing her in a couple of days, actually, in a performance.
Right.
And she's gotten really fired up about theater and musical theater.
Awesome. Great. Very good.
So she's doing that. So that's kind of fun to watch.
Right. Sure. So it's, she's getting started earlier than you did, so it'd be interesting to see where she takes it and everything. So, what kind of music does she like? You said she sings in a choir. I mean, does she like to solo, or what style of music?
I'm proud of the fact that I think I was able to introduce her to lots of different music as she was growing up. Both my wife and I did. She probably knows the titles and the singers of more 70s songs than I do.
Oh, wow. Right.
She'll listen to songs from the 70s or the 60s. She obviously loves the current music that's going on right now. Right. She loves movie scores like I do. I think I had an influence on that.
Right.
There's all kinds of different music that she really gravitates to, and it's really kind of cool to see.
Right, that kind of segue into our next topic we want to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about your podcast that you have.
I appreciate you asking, because I'm really proud of it. I mentioned briefly just a little while ago, I've had a real love affair with film music since I was 8, 9 years old.
Right.
I used to love to. I would listen to soundtracks and kind of imagine me in the movie, if you will. I'm a huge fan of James Bond and have been collecting memorabilia for that for years. And I can remember to this day of being in the garage and having a portable record player playing a soundtrack from You Only Live Twice and pretending I was James Bond fighting up everybody.
Wow. The power of music.
Yeah, now, of course, I didn't try to reenact the love scenes. But,
right.
So at a very early age, had a real interest in it. So like you've mentioned, and like what you're doing, because of the advent of technology and the ability to do things, because acting is not a real consistent, there are a few people that are consistently working, but, that's very few and far between. Need something to do in between those gigs. And to keep those creative juices going. And so I started this podcast called What's the Score? And what I'm doing is trying to talk to people in the industry and have them share with us what some of their favorite movie scores are, while also getting a chance to learn a little bit about them. It's kind of modeled after a very popular BBC radio program called Desert Island Discs. It's kind of in that same vein or same format. We've had a couple of big-name Hollywood composers already on the show.
That's incredible. How'd you get a hold to them?
The old-fashioned way, Facebook.
Really? That makes
It's
sense.
amazing. It's amazing.
That makes sense.
You just, you friend these people that happen to be on there, and it's not like I friended them and the next day I asked them, hey, can you be on the show? But these are people that I've, been connected with for several months, and much to my surprise, when I would ask, they'd say, sure, I'd love to be on.
That's incredible. Wow.
George Clinton was the first one, and most people will know his music from the Austin Powers films and Santa Claus films. Wild Things is my own particular favorite. He's done a lot. He's done over 70 films, I think.
That's incredible. Wow.
And so he's had a great career. And we hit it off instantly. We had so much material, we ended up breaking it up over two episodes. But it's a fun way to get to know these people and what they do in the film industry, but also to hear some really terrific film music, hear great music.
Right.
I want to get some locals on with that, people that are in the industry here in Louisiana.
Yes.
And everybody says they want to do it, but nobody wants to do the work of putting all the files together to send to me so I can play the songs. But
Right.
I'm working on it. And so we've just only gotten started. I think we've just got 5 episodes, but I'm really proud of it. I think it sounds surprisingly professional, and it's great fun to do. And I think the music is terrific. If you've loved film music in the past, I think you'd get a real kick out of the show.
That is amazing. I definitely want to check it out because, in all honesty, I have not heard the podcast yet, but I'm going to check it out.
Shame.
I know. I am so sorry.
Talk about show
I did not
prep.
do my
Jeez.
homework. I know, no homework. Sorry. It kind of held over from high school. But so how can we check your podcast out? Where can we find it?
Well, I do have a Facebook page, first of all.
Okay.
It's just called What's the Score?
Okay.
And you can go there, and that might direct you to where you want to go. But the main web, and it's also available on iTunes and on Stitcher. But
great.
Like the home website, I guess, if you will, is What's the Score 1, the number 1, not the word 1. What's the Score 1.podbean.com.
Gotcha.
So that but like I said, iTunes, Stitcher, and or you can go to the Facebook page and be directed.
Right.
Please like and share my
Yes,
Facebook
that's
page.
important.
I appreciate it.
So you're talking about having a podcast with these composers that are doing like major things in Hollywood, these big production films.
Not just composers necessarily. I'm going to have some actors on, or directors, or just anybody that's connected with the industry.
Great.
In some way or fashion.
That's great. And I was going to kind of bring things down to a local, more smaller level because, my short films that I'm doing, we're always looking for musicians. I've actually written 2 songs, one for my first film, 68, one for Paul. So I finally found a girl in Baton Rouge who writes songs. She's about to turn 18 years old, actually. And I'm going to meet with her next week to actually put the song together. But it was so hard. I mean, I really searched for like 8 months till I found somebody. So I guess there needs to be some kind of a network of film musicians or score people or whatever that we can kind of collaborate with.
There are, and it's funny now that I've started doing this. Now all of a sudden I'm getting people approaching me to want to be friends on Facebook and that sort of thing, and they're other composers, and there's I want to do it at some point. There are people that write scores for video games, and that's all. They don't do it for films; they do it for video games.
Right. Interesting.
So I'd like to have one of them on to learn a little bit more about what that's like.
Yeah, that would
as well as hear what their favorite scores are. But
that'd be very.
And there's a few people here in the Louisiana, South Louisiana, I guess I'd say, that have been breaking into that or certainly want to. In fact, George Clinton told me about one of them that I hope to have on the show here sometime soon.
Right, very interesting. And I would like to. So, what are some of the things you talk about? Do you talk about the inspiration that these composers have? Because I mean, somebody shows them a scene in a film, and they have to come up with the music to set the tone and the mood for the scene. And that has to just be mostly just like talent. I mean, you just have to be able to just see this, and because not everybody can do that.
No, they can. I think in many ways it's you can go to school for it, but I think it's God gives you that.
It has to be.
Yeah, I mean, and of course it's changed a lot now. Whereas in the old days, a lot of times you'd have a manuscript, you'd have everything all written out. You could maybe play a few things on a piano for a director to listen to, but it really wasn't until they hit the scoring stage whether or not the director was going to like it or not.
Right.
Now, with again, the advent of technology, they can almost recreate the orchestral sound, so that before they invest in the musicians and everything else, they can play for the director and the producers. Here's what this is going to sound like.
That's amazing.
And so they do these what they call mock-ups,
Right.
and it's the whole process is just really very interesting.
Right.
And they usually have a meeting with the director. I want music here. I don't want it here. I want silence here. I want soaring sounds here.
Right.
They'll give some direction, and then it's up to the composer to make that happen. And my favorite composer by far is John Barry, and he used to say that he didn't really consider himself a film composer. He considered himself a musical dramatist. And I thought that actually does a much better job of describing what their job is.
Right, it really does. And like you were saying earlier about how it's easy just to go ahead and put some stuff down before you hire the big bands and the orchestras and all the violinists and everything. So these keyboard workstations we have, you could almost get by with that.
Yeah, and some have tried. Some producers, to save a few coins, have tried to do that.
Right.
Right. There's still nothing quite like a live orchestra. Although
That's
I want to
true.
say I heard Pirates of the Caribbean 3 actually did do it like a synthesizer kind of a thing, but there's nothing like a live orchestra. The other thing I learned in talking with these guys, for any of you out there that are musicians or anybody has an appreciation for this, you've got anywhere from 50 to 90 people that all sit down, and they all have to be coordinated to play.
Wow.
They don't rehearse. These musicians in L.A. and London and wherever they score, a lot of times, they might do one playthrough, and then it's okay. Take one, let's go.
Wow, that's incredible.
They're so good. They're so good at sight reading. They don't even have to really practice that much. And that,
Wow.
I'm not even a musician, but that still amazed me.
Yes, that's incredible, man. Like you said, it's a God-given talent for sure. Of course, years and years of practice to hone their craft for sure. But
Yeah.
it's incredible. Yeah, so music to me has always been the hard part to get with the films, and so I go to a lot of buyout music websites and stuff and get stuff that I kind of feel that might kind of carry the scene, and it works most of the time, but I would much rather have a person to customize all the music and everything.
Oh, yeah. No, it makes a huge difference. If you've ever had obviously you have, but if you ever have an opportunity to watch a film without music before it's been put in,
Yes.
it's entirely different. A lot of times it just falls flat.
Yes, it does.
It is
Wow.
amazing how much it adds to the film. Now, these days, unfortunately, I personally think they're writing way too much music. A 2-hour movie has an hour and 25 minutes of
Right.
music in it. And to me, it's been overdone a little bit. Sometimes no music is actually making a statement, but
Right.
it is amazing to see the difference it makes.
And so I kind of got the term wrong because my son corrected me. So when you mentioned the word soundtrack, okay, so what is the definition of a soundtrack? And I was wrong. I thought a soundtrack could be just like one song of a film, but my son told me the soundtrack is all the music that encompasses a film. A lot of time they release it on a CD or
That's how I would understand it. Is
Yes.
that if you're getting a soundtrack, it's in its best form, it would be all the music that was contained within
Yes.
that movie.
right.
Now, it's very rare you ever get all the music, because sometimes there's a 10 or 15 second cue that's introducing or a transition or something. They won't put that on the
Right.
CD, but
Right.
any songs or music that goes with it, I would
Yeah.
call that's the soundtrack.
Yeah, the first quote soundtrack that I really got interested in was of course Star Wars. Back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a great one.
Do you know that John Williams and Jaws,
Yeah,
I
Jaws
think
too.
really started to get people's interest in soundtracks again.
Yes.
And the film score community has a lot to owe to those films and John Williams, that it almost made it cool to listen to
Yes.
soundtracks.
I remember hearing the Star Wars theme on the radio at the time. And I was driving my dad's truck, and the Star Wars playing on the radio. You don't hear soundtracks on the radio anymore. Well, I guess sometimes you might hear if it's a big blockbuster like Titanic or something like that. Or,
Yeah.
But for the most part, no, you don't hear soundtracks on the radio.
Well, especially if there's no lyrics, there's no one singing it.
Right.
An instrumental, yeah, it would be pretty rare to see.
Exactly. And I remember hearing the instrumental and the little R2D2 sounds playing. And it's like, I was thinking of Star Wars, you know. It's, it's an advertising tool too, because it makes you want to go see the movie when you hear
absolutely.
the soundtrack.
That's why, being a big James Bond fan, that's why the big thing has always been about the title song. They discovered back in 1964 when they had such a huge hit with Goldfinger. The song, well, the movie too, but the song, that he said, wow, this actually helps sell the movie. Maybe we should make sure we have a big song every time.
Yes.
And that changed it. Because, it was a very effective marketing tool.
It is incredible. You're right. You're exactly right about that. That is very interesting. Well, one of my homework assignments for this weekend is to check out what's the
score.
What's the score? Play on words here. What's the score? And we're going to go check that out for sure. I'm going to listen to all of your... How long are your podcasts, generally speaking?
Yeah. Look, you don't have to overdo it and listen to all of them, but...
a binge listen to
They're generally an hour and 15 minutes. A third to a half of it is music, and the other part is conversation.
Yes, okay.
But it's... I think, like I say, I think there's 5 episodes. There's a couple on there that I had actually done about a year or so ago, where it's just me and playing a lot of my favorite cues. Mm-hmm. And then there's some of the newer episodes are ones where I have a guest, again, someone in the industry that shares their favorites with me, but it's also an interview about them and their career and about film scoring and stuff like that.
Sure, very interesting. That's good. You got about an hour per episode. That's really, really good. You can get a lot out of these people. So I might not watch all of them this weekend, but I'll definitely watch. Should I start from the first one and kind of work my way up to the most recent one, or does it make a difference?
No, don't do the first one. I was still learning on that one. Right, okay. No, I do think that the two-parter with George Clinton was really fascinating and interesting. He made some great choices of music that he wanted to play, but our conversation is very insightful too.
Wow, yeah.
About the art of film scoring and how he approached it, and some behind-the-scenes stories about how things happen.
Awesome, yeah. Stuff. I'm definitely going to check it out, and I advise everybody out there to check it out as well. So, all right, we are Frank R. Wilson, actor. So glad that you came on the show today. We bump it up against the 1 hour mark already. Wow.
Time flies.
I know it does when you're having fun, too. So I always have to ask, will you come back again later on? Because we might want to catch some updates, some future stuff going on.
Oh, gosh, let me think. Yes.
Good. Thank you. Probably maybe later on.
No, I've loved it. It's been great fun.
Yes.
And I really appreciate it.
Next time you come, we'll have like a full production crew right here on the weekend or something. We have our full cast of people.
Hey, do you like film scores?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Well, I might consider having you as a guest then sometime.
Yes, that'd be great. I could kind of tell you what I'm interested in and everything. That'd be great. That sounds good. I would love to do that.
We'll plan on it.
Should I come in like a person or Skype you? Or
no, we'll do a Skype thing. I don't have the fancy setup like you do. It's just I'm on my workbench in an air conditioned space where I have to do it. So
exactly. Well, you can get away with that when you're doing just audio for sure.
Right.
That sounds great. All right, well, sounds great. So, Frank, thanks for coming out, and we're going to talk to you a little bit later on. I'm probably going to see you out there somewhere in a movie somewhere or something I'm doing you'll be in, and we'll be connecting later on, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
All right, with that being said, this is David K. Gyro, and this has been the Dave K. Show. And once again, we're going to put a plug in for our cross-platform promoter, which is PointCoupieReporter.com. PointCoupieReporter.com is Point Coupie's oldest locally owned, continuously operated news website. Since 2012, they have been Point Coupie's news and information hub. Check them out at PointCoupieReporter.com. And this is David Gyro. We're broadcasting once again off the beautiful banks of Falls River, and we'll see you next time.